The formula for happiness. I wanted to share something with you. I thought, especially my engineering friends out here might appreciate this, but anybody, I'm not an engineer and I appreciated it when it happened, and I wanted to share with you, I guess you could say this is really almost like a tribute to a somewhat distant cousin of mine. It was actually my father's cousin named Julius, and he was a Holocaust survivor. And when I was very young, my parents took my brother and I up to visit and meet with them for the first time up in Toronto, Canada, where they lived. And they had two daughters, one of whom was about my age, another one a few years younger. And it was a very special time for me. I remember that trip. To this day, I can remember, I have images in my mind of, the things that happened while we were there. We had a great time. And I remember the bagels from Canada were not as good as the one from New York, but that's another story. Nonetheless, it was a wonderful trip, and my cousin Julius was a really interesting man. As I mentioned, he was a Holocaust survivor, and a little over a year ago he passed away. And I pulled the quote right out of his obituary that one of his daughters shared with me, and it says, Julius was an engineer, a polyglot. I had to look that up. It means he spoke many languages. A teller of subversive, ribald jokes, an avid reader, and maintained decades of long correspondence with friends and family, such as my father and myself included. In fact, quite a few years ago, before there were blogs, before there was MailChimp and all this kind of stuff, I used to send out an email to a bunch of people who I thought might care. And he was on that list of people. Every once in a while he would write his responses to me and share his thoughts and comments, and they're always most interesting, and just anything coming from him I was going to take the time to read. I just had so much respect for him. And years ago when we were in touch via email and he was on this list of mine, I had apparently sent an email, and to this day I couldn't tell you for the life of me what was in the email I sent, but he replied to it with what I'm sharing with you today, which is literally the formula for happiness. And I love the way he lays it out. And of course I've given it to you verbatim from his email. That's how much I was sort of moved by it. I saved it and bookmarked it, and when the time came and Evernote came into my life, I evidently recorded it in Evernote. And so his response to me, I'll read it to you. Of course you can read it for yourself. In the write-up, he says, your latest message tells me a few personal things, and this is his sense of humor. He's very direct, no punches pulled. He says, your latest message tells me a few personal things which I read with pleasure. Your usual mail contains mainly business information, which does not interest me because we are retirees and I live on pensions, which are small but enough to allow us an acceptable lifestyle. As everybody, we have on one hand desires, which I call D, and on the other hand possibilities to satisfy them, which I call P. To be happy requires that. P minus D is greater than or equal to 0. In order to stay happy, we tailor D to a level smaller than P. Another way we would be able to strive to increase the P of the equation, which we don't like to do. And I just thought it just makes so much sense. The possibilities to meet your desires, measured against your desires. And I think in the bigger picture, what this really tells me, what it really speaks to is that it's a message of gratitude. And here was a man who had experienced probably the worst a person could experience in their lifetime, a Holocaust survivor. You can imagine somebody like him being incredibly grateful for having come through that and survived. And so I think especially coming from him, it's just really meaningful and really powerful. And I didn't realize actually until I was putting this together that it was actually just slightly over a year ago that I got the news that he passed away. So I feel it's somehow appropriate to pay tribute to him and share this, and I've chosen to share it with you. So I hope you enjoy it. I would love to hear comments and feedback from anyone who has comments or feedback on this. I just think it's really interesting. Thanks for watching, and thanks for reading.